Welcome to Saddler Sessions, brought to us by the World Pool. This week, our special guest is Blake Shinn, who chats about winning the Melbourne Cup for Bart Cummings in 2008 on Viewed. Not long after that, though, he had time on the sidelines due to being suspended for his involvement in a betting scandal. He speaks about bouncing back from that setback, riding for other legends of the turf like Guy Walter, like Gay Waterhouse, heading to Hong Kong and taking on the world's best jockeys there. Speaking of the world's best, he also took on a beat at one point Winx during her illustrious racing career. And these days, he's back doing terrific things in Melbourne, and in that time, he's also met a special person, his life partner in Lucy Yeomans. Let's get to all of that here on this episode of Saddler Sessions. Blake, thanks for joining us on the Saddler Sessions. Appreciate your time today. What a career you've had. 32 Group 1 wins, over 2,000 winners. You're still young, but you've done a lot already.
Thanks, Ed. It's been a great career. I'm really happy with what I've achieved. Melbourne Cup, couple of slippers. I feel I've got a lot more to achieve, but really proud of what I've got on the CV so far.
Let's talk about it all. Let's go back to the beginning. Growing up in Kilmore as a young guy in a racing family, what was life like for you in the early days?
Look, it was great. Obviously, with my mum and my stepfather, Lee Hope, I was around horses right from when I was born. Riding ponies, learning how to ride since I was a little kid, and then attending race meetings and all that kind of stuff. Probably not too dissimilar to yourself, but all I ever wanted to do was be a jockey, and I just kept pursuing that, and always had that love for the horse, and love for just wanting to be a rider and just following my dream and continuing that dream ever since.
Did it come pretty naturally to you? Because you look at the early results, you're 17 when you won your first Group 1, you won a Scobie Breesley Racing's Brownlow medal as an apprentice. Did being a jockey come pretty easily to you?
Look, anything you do, I think, is hard work. You don't get, results without hard work. And I think, people might say it could be natural, but ever since I was, basically born, I was riding horses and, working to get better and better. And even when I was, 10, 11, 12, 13, just working at my craft, and then when I started riding, it might have been a seamless transition when I started racing and then continued to win. But a lot of hard work went behind the scenes, and still to this day we're working just as hard. But I had a great apprenticeship and a good grounding, and that set me up till now.
And that apprenticeship, you had a good rivalry then with Nick Ryan. What were the early days of being a jockey like, being an apprentice here in Melbourne and working for your stepfather Lee?
Look, it was tough when you're working with your family and whatnot, but they were great role models for me, my stepfather Lee and my stepbrother Shannon, who he was a good role model when I was a young kid. I looked up to him, and they taught me good values of hard work and being reliable and just being honest, and that all them values where you learn when you're young pave the way. And getting up early and mucking out boxes, scrubbing the water buckets, and sweeping up and doing things like that. All that work really set me up for a future in horse racing.
So even though you were family, you were still made to do the hard yards?
Absolutely, even on Christmas Day and the public holidays and stuff, because we're a family business, and even Mum chipped in and worked hard, and money was tight, and we all had to put in for the family. So I knew that I had to sort of do my part, even though I was riding.
Let's talk about that first major, 2008, the Melbourne Cup, for none other than the legendary Bart Cummings. You rode Viewed in the Caulfield Cup. Give us an insight into the build-up to the Melbourne Cup. Could you enjoy it because you weren't expected to win that day?
Look, I guess you can enjoy it a little bit, especially the pressure is, although it's there, it's the spotlight's off you when you're, say, a bit of a long shot. Um, and, we felt the horse was going quite well. He was flying under the radar. He had an unlucky run in I think the McKinnon on the Saturday and Caulfield Cup. It was quite a hidden run. But he had everything, all the indicators where he was a natural stayer. He had been working really well at the track work. He drew well. I had a better understanding from him for the lead up and in his work. And you just hope that things went our way. And for whatever reason, it was just, we got the luck on the day, got the bob against Bauer. And it was, to do that in that race, one of the world's best races at a young age, it was very memorable for none other than Bart Cummings.
Let's elaborate on that. That Melbourne Cup to watch is quite a unique race in so many ways. You've got the 3 Aidan O'Brien horses tearing out in front like you don't see normally in a Melbourne Cup. Then you had your finish. In between that, though, turning for home, you're on viewed. You look to be tracking up beautifully. What's that feeling like when you're about to turn for home, the crowd roars and you're looking like a winning chance in the race that stops the nation?
Well, you're not thinking about too much else in terms of the crowd and whatnot. You're just riding the race, as it's unfolding. But in that race, like you say, there was a tearaway leader. It was a frantic pace. The leaders started to come back to me and my horse started to travel into the race. Bude wasn't a horse that had wasn't a sit sprint type. You had to roll sort of into his work. And as the leader started to stop, like I said, he started to get into his work and he hit the front quite early. And, instead of holding him up and stopping his momentum, I just continued to increase. He hit the front quite early, but I trusted that was the right way to ride him. And, Bauer come out of the pack, but thankfully he was just good enough to hold on.
On the line, you think you'd won it?
Good question. I wasn't too sure. I felt out there that Bauer was coming at me and we sort of got to about the 70-metre mark and Bauer didn't improve on its run and it sort of peaked and then my horse just maintained and, it's hard to judge when that kind of happens and you're just hoping that your horse's head sort of bobs right on the line first and thankfully it did.
You were just 20 years old when that happened. Could you appreciate the significance of it at the time?
Absolutely not. No, you don't. You get caught up in the moment and it's it's crazy at the time. And when you're watching it as a young kid and you realise that's the race that we all dream of winning. But when you actually win it, it's insane. Your life changes and things happen and whatnot. But you're not really ready for it, especially when you're 20 years old. So, you don't appreciate it. But certainly now, as I'm a lot older, you learn that them big wins, you do have to savour them, and I certainly take them a lot differently now.
And what about doing it for Bart?
Yes, that was really, really special. He's, we all know that he's the Cup's king. That was his 13th. He'll go down in history as, the Cup's king and, arguably Australia's greatest ever trainer. And, that was a very proud moment to do it for a legend like Mr. Cummings, who actually supported me right from day one when I was a kid. I won my first big race. It was the St. Leger at Flemington on a horse called Precedence. I think it was 2005 in them same colours. So it was really special.
He was a good old horse too, Precedence. From one legend to another then, so from Bart to another person who had a special influence on your career, moving up to Sydney to work for Gay Waterhouse. How did that come about? And tell us what Gay's like to work for.
Yeah, look, first of all, how it come about, I was doing very well in Melbourne at the time in about, say, 2007. She, picked up the phone, asked if I'd be interested to come and move to Sydney and ride for her. I thought about it, and I jumped at that chance, and we had some great success at the time, but you don't really understand, and appreciate what gay's like until you really work for and work under. And it was a tough time, but we had some great moments. Obviously, winning with getting within Sebring and some other great horses. So I rode for her for about 2 years, and then I made a decision to just go and be freelance. But until this day, we've got a wonderful relationship, and I still ride quite a bit for her here in Melbourne. But she's the queen of racing, and I've just got the utmost respect for her, and she taught me so much about myself, about life, and she's a wonderful person in racing.
She's quite a mentor to those people that she works for, isn't she?
Everyone, yep. She says hello to everyone. She acknowledges everyone, appreciates everyone who works for her, and tries to help everyone. And I think that's really important. She makes everyone feel good about themselves, and like I said, she's just a wonderful person. Although she's one of the best trainers and that I've ever ridden for, and she's one of the best people I've ever met.
Darren Beeman had dominated the Sydney Jockey's room up until the point where you got there. In your first season riding in Sydney, you won the premiership. So again, success pretty quickly there in that scene.
For sure. Obviously having the backing of Gay Waterhouse helped. Moving to Sydney, it was a great time. And when I look back, you had people like Jimmy Cassidy, Larry Cassidy, plenty of great jockeys. Just caught me on the hop. But I think Huey Bowman, whether he was there, but there were some wonderful jockeys over the 10 years that I was in Sydney riding. And then James come at a bit of a later time, James McDonald, but Nash was there at the time, Nash Rawiller, like I said, Huey, Tommy Berry, some really wonderful world-class jockeys, Kieran McAvoy, the list goes on. But great time to be in Sydney for 10 years and, look back on that fondly.
So they're the up times. Some of the down times, 2010, you get banned for betting on racing, 15 months. With the hindsight, with those years behind, 15 years on from them, how do you reflect on that time in your life?
Oh, look, you obviously have regrets. You definitely have regrets. But things like that, shape who we are as individuals. And that's the one regret that I'll ever have looking back in our sport. But I can't take that, away from myself. But I certainly believe it's, made me a much better person, a much better rider, and just set me up for my whole life in terms of financially, how I look, in terms of how I, like with my money and things like that, and go about things, and just everything about life from what happened has made me a much better person.
What did you do in that time, in that 15 months?
Oh, look, we had to sort of seek some help and get some professional help to curb that problem, and then worked in a bit of real estate and things like that, which I've still got still friends with the people who helped me fill in that time. And it was a tough time, but I tried to make the most of it, and it was an interesting time, but look, I had to make the most of it.
Tough time, interesting time, but also then working in real estate like that, for instance, did it give you the opportunity to see a world outside of racing which should consume you, I guess, for all your life, really, up until that point?
For sure. And it certainly took me away from racing, like you say, when it definitely consumed me 24/7. So not looking at the races all the time and just having a break from it really helped me, and just seeing how other people live their life and work in a different side of business, and taught me a lot about real estate and things like that. And it's interesting.
So when something like that happens, then you come back, you need people who are going to support you. I'm envious because there's one gentleman of the turf I never got to meet who had an influence on your career, Guy Walter. What was he like to ride for and then to get those Group 1 successes on streamer and appearance?
He was amazing. He gave me an opportunity when I came back, and I was stable rider for him for 2 years, and before he passed away, and it was we were just going really well at the time with winning on streamer, and had a Group 1 on appearance in the Coolmore. A lot of other nice horses, Toydini, plenty of other good ones, but just a wonderful horseman, very, very another caring person who taught me a lot, just about how to treat people, and so good with horses. And his wife Wendy, they were great. They took me under their wing, and I thoroughly enjoyed going down to Goulburn and where they trained, and we sort of made them meetings sort of our own, and that just helped the horses when they come to town. And it was so sad that day he passed away, and he left a sort of an indelible mark on sort of myself, but a lot of people. And his legacy will be sort of never forgotten.
No, special person. 2016, the Slipper, Capitalist. Let's talk about that. Some happier times. There's pressure in races when you're riding a big colt for big connections. How are you handling that, Blake?
Look, handling it really well. We had a lot of confidence in Capitalist as an early 2-year-old. He shot the lights out, in the Breeders' Plates, and then winning the Magic Millions, and he looked the best 2-year-old, of that season. And then we got beat, I think it was in the Todman in a field of 4. And he sort of drifted out in the market, went from, say, odds on favourite, and people weren't quite sure of how he was going and stuff. But, Peter Snowden and Paul never lost faith in him, and it's quite difficult to win a Magic Millions and go onto a slipper. So they knew what they were doing. It was interesting working with them, with Capitalist that time, just how they planned that. It's hard to peak a 2-year-old twice in a season, but they did an incredible job to bounce off that Todman into a slipper, and just he drew barrier 2. Everything worked out favourably, got the gap, and won incredible. He was just an outstanding 2-year-old right from day one. When we worked with him, he was push button, and he was just an elite horse.
You gave him a gun ride too, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah, like I said, gun 2-year-old, knew his job well. One of the best 2-year-olds arguably the best 2-year-old I've ever ridden.
I want to talk to you about a horse that you were able to beat. Not many were able to do that. Winx, you're able to beat. A filly called First Seal in a flight stakes. You've got an interesting relationship with Winx because you beat her on First Seal, but then also came close on Humidor. Tell us about the First Seal time and the Cox Plate where you almost stopped Moonee Valley.
Yeah, the Cox Plate when we nearly beat Winx. Well, look, on First Seal, she was an outstanding 3-year-old. Basically took all before her in the autumn as a 3-year-old, beating Winx a couple of times, and then just got beat in a Coolmore. Great filly, outstanding filly, but plagued by a few, I think, feet issues that prevented her from training on as a really superstar mare. Albeit I won on a couple of races on her as an older mare, but just had a few niggling injuries that just stopped her. But as a 3-year-old, she was incredible. She had a scintillating turn of foot that, could put the race to bed really quickly, and winning that flight stakes, that was probably as good as as good as you would see. But like I said, beyond that, she just had a few problems stopping her from going on. But she potentially was as good a horse as I've ridden, but unfortunately, just injuries and troubles stopped her. And then we go on to Humidor with Winx. Well, that was an interesting Cox Plate. There was the tactics around that, how we could ride the race to win, but just get the best out of Humidor. And the plan was just to go back, save ground, ride a conservative race. We knew Bowman was going to stay wide and cover ground. If we could save ground and save lengths, well, that was going to be our opportunity to try and get as close as we did. And, geez, we give it a hell of a shake, didn't we?
You certainly did. Did you think you had her at one point?
When I got off her back, I thought we were going to challenge, but I knew Hugh had something up the locker about the 100. And then when he asked for an effort, like them real good ones, they just lift underneath you, and she certainly did that.
Where does she rate amongst the horses who you've ridden against and seen at the races, Winx?
She's the best, yeah, by a mile.
When you have a ride like you had on Humidor, I'm even thinking you tried to beat Winx and came close with Happy Clapper in Sydney when we were in Hong Kong together, and we'll expand upon that later. But Playa del Puente, you almost beat Golden 60, causing a huge upset you hope to in a Hong Kong derby. When you ride your horse performs above expectations, but you don't win, is there pride in that you've got the best out of your horse to perform better than expected, or are you disappointed that you didn't get the desired result?
A little bit of both, because you were always looking, could I have done a little bit better? Could we have beaten it? I look back at that Cox Plate where I nearly beat Winx. Well, there possibly was an opportunity to go up the rail. Could I have swapped the whip over to the left? Maybe it might have made a difference. Maybe it might not have. And people will say it's a great ride, but there's always, from my point of view, could I have done something different? That's the way I will look at every race that I ride in. It's not just the big ones, but that's what that's how we get better. So yeah.
Are you your own harshest critic?
Yeah. We don't need anyone to tell me what, even though it's great to get all views and what you might be able to do and improve on, but I definitely look at every race closely to see where I can improve on.
The move to Hong Kong 2019, was that your opportunity or your desire to test yourself outside of Australia and in a cultural melting pot of riders there really based at Sha Tin?
Absolutely, and I followed Hong Kong racing for a long, long time. My idol growing up was Darren Beedman and followed him over there and when he was riding, and from afar, Hong Kong's a place where we all would like to test ourselves. It was very hard to get in there because of the history of the betting record and that, and I had to prove to the Hong Kong stewards that I had was clean and doing everything properly, and that took five years, I feel, to show them. And thankfully, they give me the opportunity, and it was hard to prove not only to Hong Kong that I could make it there, but even to myself. But when I made the decision to leave, I felt content in myself that I showed that I was good enough to be there.
Was that a tough decision to leave? Because first season, 15 winners, you built upon that in the second season, then had a really good season. Your last season, you're looking like you're building up really good support, momentum, those sort of things. Was it a challenging call to say, I want to go home now?
It definitely was a challenging call. I remember David Hayes saying to me, like, are you sure you want to leave? You've worked this hard to build the contacts and set yourself up. And as we all know, Hong Kong's so lucrative and the money for a rider and the tax and stuff. But I was at an age, I think it was, say, 30, 35. And, I think it was kind of like, do I stay in Hong Kong for the next 10 years or I want to come back to Australia and try and cement back into Australia? And it's, I watched someone like a Brett Preble come back to Australia, and it was very difficult for him, although he won some Group 1s on Behemoth and won a Caulfield Cup on Incentivized. It's quite difficult, I think, when you get to a older age, say around your 40s, to really break in if you've been away for 5 years plus. And I had been away for 3 years, and people still, I've got that name from being in Australia and that familiarity. So I didn't want to lose that. So I made that call to come home come back to Melbourne, which I'd been away for 13 years, and I feel it's the best decision I've ever made.
Coming back to Melbourne, why Melbourne, given that before you went to Hong Kong, you'd been based for so long in Sydney?
Good question. Obviously, I was born and raised here. I hadn't seen my family or been with my family for, say, 13 years since I made that decision to move to Sydney in about 2007. And I just felt, for family reasons and a desire to do well in Melbourne racing, they were the two reasons to come home.
How proud are you then when you came home? You got the premiership in your first season here in Melbourne. So other jockeys, as you mentioned, had found it tough to re-establish yourself. And I'm not saying it wasn't tough for you, but the groundwork you were quickly rewarded with.
Yes. Look, I look back and it although it might look easy, but it's been a hard slog, especially to, Melbourne trainers and are quite loyal to their jockeys. You got to really graft away and you got to work really, really hard. And the colony of riders here are, very, very capable. So you've got to work hard. I've got a great manager, Liam Pryor, and it doesn't go without hard work. But to look what we've achieved now after 3 seasons, very, 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 very proud.
Yep, so not just one but 2 premierships. Let's expand upon the hard work side of things. So we see you here today in your gym gear after you've done a personal training session. We're in the Spring Carnival where you've got to be looking out for what horses you want to be riding, all of those sort of things. Day to day, what's life like as Blake Shinn in terms of being on top of the physical side of things, but also getting the best out of yourself, getting onto the right horses?
No, it's full on. You could be working the horses in the morning, getting home, prepping for the races, personal training, then like I said, planning for races, upcoming races, constantly liaising with your manager, working on your diet. Yes, you're always forward thinking in our game. It's never ending, and it's busy. We're working right from the time we get up to the time we go to bed. But that's what we have to do. I'm not the only one in that position. There's some elite jockeys. I couldn't imagine what Craig Williams, his work life balance would be like. But that's why he's in the position that he is, and that's what we're up against. So that's we've got to keep surging forward and trying to raise the bar.
A few years ago, just before you left for Hong Kong, in fact, you wrote a really good article where you spoke about the mental health side of things and your battles with depression, but also telling people and encouraging people to go and seek help if they had their issues. Tell us a bit about that and how is your mental health these days, Blake?
It's good. That's part of the reason why I work so hard. And you don't give yourself an opportunity to think too much, even though I'm a very deep thinker. But I think, riding lots and winning and, doing what I love is important to me. And that's another reason why I left, Hong Kong racing 2 days a week. I think being here and just riding lots and winning and, keeping active is important, and that's stimulating for the brain. And doing that article is, letting people inside the mind of someone like me might be able to help someone just improve their mental attitude. And like I've learnt that when I'm having a struggling time, working and getting out of bed and keeping active is very important for me. So, and that stems right back to when I was in Sydney, when I wasn't riding stable rider for Gay, but she helped me get out of a dark period when I was there, and turning up for track work and putting in the hard yards turned my career around at one point. And I look back on that. But if I can share any part of my journey or help any young rider or person, more than happy to help.
We all need important people in our lives. In the last couple of years, your relationship with Lucy, who you recently rode her first winner as a trainer, what's it been like, that partnership, the two of you together? And I'd imagine that win at Sandown, even though it was a Wednesday at Sandown, meant more than just a normal midweek winner.
It was a great day and great for Lucy. And the last couple of years since we've been together, like life's just been terrific. I think my career's been going super, and look, it's we're both happy. And now she's gone out on her own and had the courage to do that. She got her first winner at Sandown, and for me to ride it, like, dream come true, really.
Fantastic stuff. Just a couple of ones to wrap up with. You've done so much in your career that we touched on at the very beginning. What's your proudest moment in the saddle?
I don't have one, but I think just to say that, I can be reliable, really. Like, I think trainers can, and owners can know when they put Blake Shinn on, they know what they're going to get every time they put me on. And that's someone that's going to give their best. Things mightn't work out, but they know that they're going to get a jockey that's done their form. They know they're going to get someone that's going to turn up every time, good or bad, through circumstances. But Blake Shinn will give you 110%, and I think that's something that I can hang my hat on and be very proud of.
Certainly. One more. When you do call it a day and you hang up the boots after everything you've done, what would you like to do between now and then that you haven't ticked off on that list just yet?
I'd love to win a Cox Plate. I'd love to ride in Europe if I can. I would love to just continue winning Group 1s and, leave a great legacy on the sport. I feel I've got plenty of good years left, and just keep continuing to build my name in the sport as one of the better riders that hopefully we've seen.
You're certainly doing that, Blake. Thanks so much for taking the time to tell your story. Proud to call you a friend. I'm proud of what you've achieved. Thanks for talking to us here.
Pleasure, Ed. Thank you very much. I would love to just continue winning Group 1s and, leave a great legacy on the sport. I feel I've got plenty of good years left, and just keep continuing to build my name in the sport as one of the better riders that hopefully we've seen.
You're certainly doing that, Blake. Thanks so much for taking the time to tell your story. Proud to call you a friend. I'm proud of what you've achieved. Thanks for talking to us here.
Pleasure, Ed. Thank you very much.